facts and biblical references, speaking truth to power. So let us begin. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. In the very beginning of Earth's history, Satan used a medium to communicate to the first human beings, Adam and Eve. A medium is simply defined as the vessel by which or through which something is done. It is a way of communicating information and ideas, the means of affecting or conveying something to the senses. In the case of Satan, the serpent was the medium that was used to communicate, convey, and impress thoughts and ideas to Eve. You see, Satan used a medium to deceive, manipulate, and seduce a woman. And then he used a woman to destroy both the man and herself. Satan used a medium to entice his Eve audience into believing that sin and disobeying God was fun, exciting, and something she was missing out on. Satan used a medium to paint God as a liar, a bad guy who didn't really care about them and was keeping secrets. Satan used a medium to teach and spread principles that went contrary to the very instructions and principles of God. But here's a secret. Do you know what the plural form of the word medium is? It is actually medium. The player hasn't changed, and neither has the game. Satan is still using media and media platforms to not only seduce women and men, but also manipulate them into destroying the other in the false name of love. Satan is still using media to entice people to sin and disobey God. How many commercials, magazines, TV shows, social media platforms, and movies paint sexual immorality, drinking, you name it, as fun and desirable? It is not a coincidence that the majority of the values, teachings, and principles that the media world has to offer is in direct conflict and opposition to the teachings of God and His Word. Since the world of media is so extensive, we will be focusing on video games, social media, and the effects on the brain and mind.
The video game industry. The value of the video game market in the United States was estimated at $17.69 billion in 2016, while the entire global video market was valued at $75 billion that same year. Consumer spending on gaming in America in 2018 is $43.4 billion, and in 2019 an estimate of $10 billion on mobile games. The amount of time people who play video games spend an average of nearly 6 hours each week playing. The age group associations Gamers 18 years to 25 spend the most time at more than 7 hours each week. The age group that spends the most time playing video games are the millennials, age 18 to 35. They represent 40% of video game players. Violence and video games. A slew of studies have found that in comparison to non-violent or pro-social video games, violent games promote feelings of hostility and aggression, desensitize the player to violence, and change the player's perception of what constitutes violence. Both the American Physiological Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics take a firm stance against children and teens playing violent video games. The physiological group reports that more than 90% of children in the United States play video games. Among kids between the ages 12 and 17, the number rises to 97%. More important, 85% or more of video games on the market contain some form of violence. The titles seem to say it all: Manhunt, Thrill Kill, Gears of War, Mortal Kombat, Grand Theft Auto. However, even the seemingly benign Pokemon Go requires players to go to battle. Susan Tortello of the University of Texas said, "We know that violence in general is associated with mental health problems. We also know, given brain research, that our brain sometimes doesn't distinguish between what's real and what we see on TV." Spiritual lessons. One of the points in the AY Legion of Honor says, "Honor Christ in that which I choose to behold." There is a natural law that we all operate under. By beholding, we become changed. Some may feel that they can bypass or have a cheat code for this natural law, but they are only deceiving themselves. The changes happen so imperceptibly, or behind the scenes, so to speak, and at any given moment, what had taken root in the imagination will suddenly reveal itself in reality. We will reap what we sow. Galatians 6:8 says, "For he that soweth in the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap everlasting life."
The testimony you are about to hear is from two individuals who were once addicted to video games. Now, not everyone that plays video games are addicted. However, it is important to understand not only the symptoms and the signs, but to educate yourself so you might share some useful information to those who you might know that can be possibly addicted to video games. My hope and prayer is that you will learn or get some form of edification through the testimony of these two young men and the power of Jesus Christ.
Pretty soon discovered that there was a lot of games online and got involved in playing online multiplayer games, and even started to get into fighting games where you're actually fighting with human characters and killing and doing other really bad things in virtual reality.
But then you start going into empire building games, and I think they can be some of the most destructive. Not as far as the content goes, but the effect it has on you, because it turns you into, completely cuts you off from society.
But, you justify it in your mind to think, well, it's virtual reality, so it doesn't matter. But deep down, I knew those games were wrong. I knew that were hurting me. I knew they were harming my character and affecting my relationship with my mum and with my other brothers and sisters.
And so your little empire that you're slowly building is threatened by other people. So you want to protect it whenever you can. So you stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. You get up again at 5 o'clock in the morning and keep playing. And because the next day you had it, you don't want to speak to anyone. You don't want to do anything, so you can't. Don't want to go to work, so you quit your job, and then you stay home, do nothing, but play games all day long.
And it affected my ability to focus on everyday tasks. Because this habit of playing games and putting yourself in this virtual world really creates an unnatural state of excitement in your mind. And it really taxes your mental and nervous energies. And it gives you this, really puts your nerves on edge and gives you a shot of adrenaline. Anyone who's played computer games will know what I mean. And once this feeling wears off, it leaves a sense of boredom, dissatisfaction with the ordinary things of life in proportion to the amount of excitement that you felt while playing the game. So it takes you on this experience of a high. It's like any addiction. It takes you on a high where you're feeling really good and then drops you really low in proportion to the excitement that you felt before. And it makes the ordinary things of life, the real things of life that you have to do every day, appear boring and dull and dissatisfying. And you just want to do whatever you need to do in order that you can get back to playing that game, to get that feeling of excitement that you got before.
At this time, we will be showing a 32-second clip of some of the video games that these two young men were addicted to. Now, the purpose for showing this film is to highlight the spiritual themes that sometimes go unnoticed within these games. Now, since the following clip is somewhat graphical, we're asking if you feel uncomfortable or you have kids that you don't want seeing this clip. Now would be the time to either leave the room or fast forward 32 seconds and wait for the continuation of their testimony.
While Halo and Grand Theft Auto are all about misrepresenting Christ and his precious law, Call of Duty is a different story.
Cain was the first man ever to strike down another. And when the Lord came to him and said, "What have you done?" Cain could not hide his crime, for the voice of his brother's blood cried out from the very ground.
Really impacted on my relationship with God, especially. It separates you from God, and before you know it, you don't even think about God. You distance yourself in every way from anything to do with God. And really, God becomes a computer game, basically, because you think that in this game you are all powerful, so who needs God anyway? I mean, I can still play on my computer without God. That's the way you start to think.
Began to realise that this was destroying my relationship with my family, my mum and my other siblings, but more importantly, it was destroying my relationship with God.
The effect on my relationship with God was probably very lasting. It lasted longer than actually playing computer games.
It was taking my focus away from spiritual things. The Bible became a boring book that was dull and dissatisfying because of the excitement and unnatural world that I was putting myself in playing computer games. It was completely effective in distracting me from the great controversy that was raging around me. I just got totally absorbed in this thing. And so I began to realize this, and I found it very difficult to break away from this habit because of how strong the addiction was that I formed over quite a period of time.
And yeah, took me a long time to get out of it mentally. It was a mental hole that you get stuck in and you can't get out.
However, in Christ there is one who is stronger than any addiction. No matter how strong it is, no matter how long that we've had this addiction in our lives, it can be overcome. By the grace of God, this addiction was overcome. The first step that really helped me overcome this addiction was getting to the point where I realized this was my enemy, not my friend. I recognized the danger that it was to me and what it was doing to my life. Even though it was something that I found pleasure in, it wasn't my friend. it was my enemy. And that was my first step in trying to overcome this addiction. Secondly, is going to God in prayer and poured out my heart to God and said, Lord, I've got to overcome this. I can't call myself a Christian. I can't fight the battles that you would want me to fight. I can't wage successful warfare in the great controversy and have so much of my time and energies focused in playing these games.
And you've got to start praying again, start reading the Bible again. That was another important step for me. Because when you're playing games, you don't even read anything, let alone the Bible. And when you start reading the Bible, you start realising how wrong it is. And that conscience starts to wake again.
And think with me and think ahead to the time when, by the grace of God, we can be standing on the sea of glass with the unnumbered saints and angels. And we look back in our life, are we going to have regrets? Are we going to regret that we wasted so much time, so much energy in a completely unrealistic world with no point, no purpose? I want to live my life with no regrets. And I'm sure you do too. So think about it, pray about it, pour out your heart to God. Find a friend who you can confide in, a friend who you can be accountable to, maybe even a computer gaming buddy who you can go to and say, mate, do you want to give up playing these computer games? Don't you think we can do better things with our time? Find someone who thinks the same as you do and wanting to give this up, and make a decision with them. Say, no, I'm not going to waste my life in one more minute of my life doing these things. I'm going to find something constructive. I'm going to build better relationships with my family, with my wife, with my children. I'm going to put that time into doing what I can to save souls for God's kingdom. And as you and your friend do that, you will live your life with no regrets. And when we get to heaven, and when you look back, you'll see that as one of the best decisions you've made in your life.
We are moving on to our next topic: social media. We will be looking at the good, the bad, and the effects on the brain.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. There are tons of social networks, and we use them not only to connect with friends and family, but also to share and consume content. Lots and lots of content. All of those photos, likes, and comments are changing the way we think. This is Your Brain On, where we explore how the world affects our brains and ourselves. Humans have a deep-seated desire to share. When you disclose information about yourself, it strongly activates the part of the brain associated with dopamine. That's the pleasure center. No wonder 40% of our daily speech is about ourselves, a figure that jumps to 80% on social. That pleasurable effect is multiplied as people engage with what you posted. The dopamine hits keep coming with every notification. A like, a share, a comment, and you crave more. But when it comes to consuming the content others share, the effects on our brains aren't always so pleasurable. Scrolling through social feeds can temporarily reduce self-control, particularly when it comes to spending or eating, possibly because looking at pictures, like these tasty-looking meals on Instagram, can trigger the reward centers in our brains. Social media can also make users more prone to peer pressure, especially teens. In one controlled study, researchers arbitrarily assigned likes to a set of digital photos. Teens tended to like photos that already had many likes as compared to photos with few likes. And when they saw photos of risky behavior, like drinking and smoking, neural activity decreased in their cognitive control network, which aids in decision-making. But the newsfeed isn't all bad news for the brain. A study of depressed teens showed lots of positive use, such as using social media to reach out and create connection, or to look for entertaining, funny posts to boost moods. And in middle-aged to older adults, performing searches may stimulate and even improve brain function. The key to overcoming the bad aspects is keeping up robust relationships in real life. A long-term study showed the negative effects of Facebooking are equal or greater to the positive impact of real-life experiences. So make sure you're friending, liking, and loving in your offline life too.
So, what are you saying exactly?
If scrolling through your social media feed feels like a drug you can't get away from, that's because it kind of is. When something makes you feel good, your brain responds by producing a chemical called dopamine. Drinking alcohol, smoking a cigarette, seeing someone you love, all of that equals dopamine. Getting a like on your Facebook post, yup, that produces dopamine too. Your Instagram feed is where your friends tell you they like your girlfriend, approve of your outfit. That approval gives you dopamine, which is why 10 seconds after you close the app, your instinct is to open it again. So before you lay in bed at night scrolling through photos, remember that your brain is wired to think that likes on Insta are just as important as someone liking you in real life.
Gotcha. So what about Twitter?
Important statistics on the social platform Twitter. Twitter was founded on March 2006. Headquarters is located in San Francisco, California. Total number of monthly active Twitter users is 230 million. Total numbers of tweets sent per day is 500 million. Percentage of Twitter users on mobile is 80%. Number of Twitter daily active users, 152 million. 34% of Twitter users are females, while 66% are males. There are 48.35 million monthly active Twitter users in the US. 38% of Twitter users are between the ages of 18 and 29, and 26% users are between the ages of 30 and 49 years old. The average age using Twitter is age 40. 80% of Twitter users are affluent millennials. The top 3 countries by users count outside the US are Japan with 35.65 million users, Russia with 13.9 million users, and UK with 13.7 million users. 80% of Twitter users accessing this platform on mobile device, and 93% of video views are on mobile. Twitter financials. Twitter totals revenue in the fourth quarter of 2019 reached $1.01 billion US dollars. Advertising revenue totaled $885 million US dollars, an increase of 12% year over year. Mobile advertising revenue was 88% of the total advertising revenue. Twitter is currently valued at $24.6 billion. Some fun facts: 71% users say they use the network to get their news. 85% small and medium businesses use Twitter to provide customer service. 75% of business to business use Twitter to market their products and/or services on Twitter, for example, from manufacturer to wholesaler or wholesaler to retailer transactions. Barack Obama is currently the most followed account on Twitter with over 112 million followers. Twitter is known to be the preferred social network for news consumption. Twitter users spend an average of 3.39 minutes on this social network platform per session. So as we look at Twitter, we see Twitter has a great influence. Now, what can we learn about this influence? How are we to use influence? From the spirit of prophecy, we learn through Christ, God has invested man with an influence that makes it impossible for him to live to himself. So, this is a responsibility from which we cannot free ourselves. Our words, our acts, our dress, our deportment, even the expression of the countenance has an influence. Upon the impression thus made, there hang results for good or evil, which no man can measure. Every impulse thus imparted is seed sown, which will produce its harvest. If by our example we aid others in the development of good principles, we give them power to do good. In their turn, they exert the same influence upon others, and they upon still others. Thus, by our unconscious influence, thousands may be blessed.
I think as Christians, we should try to use effectively every communication medium that we have at hand, but we have to use them wisely and carefully. So for example, what about social media, where things get argumentative and people tend to attack? Should Christians even be there? Well, for the most part, I would say yes, but here's where we need to communicate differently. Rather than descending into chaos, descending into anger, taking cheap shots at people, a straw man, I think Christians need to do two things. Number one, we need to know what we believe and why. We need to communicate in an informed manner. We have a responsibility as Christians to know the truth and to proclaim it. So I've seen other people effectively use name calling to silence a debate, but as Christians, we can have nothing to do with that. We have a greater responsibility to speak truth and to do our homework. So part of what we should do in the world of social media is speak truth. But second, we need to do it graciously and with kindness. It says in the Bible that a gentle word turns away anger. I think as Christians, we should be characterized by those who are gracious towards other people. We're willing to listen. We don't take cheap shots. We don't build straw men. We don't participate in ad hominems where you attack somebody personally. We communicate, but we do it generously, we do it graciously, and we give other people the benefit of the doubt without backing down. So frankly, if Christians are able to get on social media and communicate truth and do it in love, I think that's a powerful formula for making a difference.
Capture my thoughts, Lord. Gird me in truth. Let me follow thy word as in the days of my youth. With childlike faith, take into custody my mind. Keep me close to you so your ways I can find. Control and restrain me. Release me not from thy hold. May my heart for you not turn lukewarm or cold. Let me not be delusioned by the wisdom of man. Seize upon my belief. Show me your perfect plan. Capture my thoughts, Lord. In my mind, be in control. I give to you my life. Let not man conquer my soul. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5. Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Called to freedom. Called to freedom, not worldly bondage. Called to understanding, wisdom, and knowledge. Called to liberation, not worldly dependence. Called into holy living, moral transcendence. Called to empowerment, not worldly subjection. Called to be the light of Jesus, his reflection. Called to be separation, not worldly servitude. Called to be discerning, with minds daily renewed. Called to freedom, not worldly confirmation. Called into new life, a holy transformation. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you may present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So let me ask you this. Is God in your media life? Does your social media and the games you play reflect the image of God? And the final question, are you playing? Are you playing? Or Are you playing the media? Or is the media